Um, Hello, can you hear me? Because I can't hear anyone.
Okay, can you hear us now, Lisa?
Can you hear us now?
Yes, yes, yes,
Great.
yes.
Thank you so much for being with us. I kindly ask you to present yourself very briefly and then start
Right.
with the presentation. You have 25 minutes.
I know. 20 plus 5. I'll try to be a little bit shorter than 20 because we are a little bit late and not to interfere with the coffee break afterwards.
Thank you so much.
So I'm Ligia. I'm a Romanian. I have a long history of language teaching and learning. Um, I am a fan of multilingualism, but today I'm going to present some results from a research that ran a little bit havoc when, to keep a term that Mario used during the previous session, when COVID hit. So this is part of a research we carried on in our organization, National Center for Policies and Evaluation in Education. We did that right before the pandemic. Actually, we couldn't carry it out throughout to the very end. We just have some hints from the pilot study because there were two stages. One was an evaluation as a written evaluation, and it was the obsolete paper-based assessment because we did not have at that time the infrastructure. It was the year 2019, 2020. We did not have a good infrastructure of digital tools to do stuff in a more modern way, and we couldn't feel really a pressure to do so. And then the pandemic started, so we managed to have the test, but we no longer managed to do the classroom observations on the samples so that we could also have the oral component. So what it was all about, a comprehensive assessment on the results of primary education students on a representative sample, national representative sample, and it involved the use of integrated tests. Some tests were Romanian only, the children's mother tongue, and some were half Romanian, half English, because the foreign language that is studied mostly in Romania is English in primary education. Actually, 87% of the students who are primary graders study English. Only 13% of them would share either French or Spanish or Italian or German. So it was representative only English to have it as a language. When we speak of key competence-based curriculum in Romania, we think a little bit of a curriculum situation where the provision for each year of study is overrun by some descriptors of attainment, of achievement at the end of a key stage. So we have them divided into primary education, middle school, and lower secondary education, high school. And we have this progression that some experts in curriculum development devised, starting from the provision in the European 8 key competencies. And it's been progressively designed so that it addresses stages of psychological development. So the descriptors, as they are in the European recommendation on key competencies, are subdivided, subcategorized on levels of attainment at the end of primary, middle school, and high school. And this is how our curriculum is designed after this provision was included in a law that was passed about 10 years ago. So we were here at the beginning of the year school year 2019-2020, and we had the funds to launch this research. So we did first a pilot, and we are very happy that we managed to do that, because now we know that there is also a possibility to look into some of the components that cannot be tested in a written assessment, be it PBA or CBA, but it's still written and you need the live action somewhere. And we had observation grids for all the components in these descriptors that cannot be seen, cannot be measured in a written assessment. But as I said, in the main survey, we couldn't actually do it. So basically the question was, what is exactly the level of performance for each of the 8 key competencies at the end of primary education? And what we are going to look into during my presentation is one component, but which is connected with 2 other components, one component being foreign language competence, actually communication in a foreign language. I'm speaking in the terms of the set of key competencies that was valid at that time. In the meantime, we had a new set that was validated by the European Union in 2018, and we are now adapting it into our national system. And what we are going to deal with is the primary education level A1 for communication in a foreign language, mainly English. But there are questions in the test that connect to 2 other key competencies, which are learning to learn and cultural awareness and expression. And there were, of course, other components that were piloted in the observation grid, but I cannot refer to them because this is not part of the main study. So a little bit about the sampling and the test design. We had a representative sample that took into account a variety of structure of factors such as urban, rural, school status. Is it a coordinating school or a very small school that is under the head, so to say, of an umbrella of a bigger school? Is it multi-grade or single grade? And then, so it was a sample of schools that was selected according to these factors. Then we did a class selection in order to allow small schools to be as well represented in the sample as the big schools. And the idea was, if there is a very, very small school, there is just one class represented. If it is a bigger school and they have 2 grade 4 classes, then there are going to be all those students in the 2 classes. If it is a larger school, it is going to be just 2 classes. So actually the standard was 2 classes, but if the school was smaller, it was the single class possible in the selected sample. And if the school was bigger, we remained with 2 classes. And in terms of test design, there were 6 modules in Romanian, actually 6 test unit in Romanian. and 3 in English, and these were combined in booklets, and we came out with 15 booklets that were in a spiral administrated at the level of each class. So the possibility of students to inspire from one another was very, very low because the booklets were very different. In terms of numbers, we had for English nearly 1,500 students from all the sample schools, and each of those 3 modules had a portion of 475 kids that took it. So the 3 English modules, because they were spiraled at the level of all the classes that were involved, they all had a similar, if not identical, number of participants. That makes it representative at no level in terms of results. So these 3 modules were done according to a sort of mixture of practices. The very common way of dealing with measurement in a written form and also learning in a written form is having pictures and statements that relate to the pictures. And 2 of the modules try to mirror 2 topics from the curriculum, 2 subtopics from the curriculum, and one of them was dogs, one of them were bears, and it was the topic of pets and animals in the curriculum. The 3rd module was a very simple functional test. It was basically a poster for holidays for children in a resort hotel. Same style of statements with images, but one was just pure information text about dogs or bears, and the other version was functional because it was announcing, opportunities of holidays in a hotel that made it different and non-standard according to the practices, not according to the curriculum, because the curriculum has the functional text, simple functional text included in it. The findings are going to be presented according to the measurements we had. So the first surprise we had is that we do not have average performance at national levels. We either have a group of low achievers or a group of high achievers. As you can see, the normal bell curve is not present here. There is more like a back-turned camel with 2 bells, and one represents the low achievement on the left side, and on the right side are the high achievers. And we are going to see that further on, it mirrors a gap between rural and urban population. 30% is the gap in written expression and 10% in reading comprehension. The last graph on the right side is the overall performance in the test, and the difference is 13% there. Across the 3 modules, it's interesting to note, we expected to have written expression at a lower percent than reading comprehension, but it's interesting to see how the diverse modules operated. So in written expression, the non-standard, so the less used in practice text fared pretty low in written expression, quite low, as you can see, it's 25% compared to 40 plus something in the other two. But in reading comprehension, it fared better, which was really surprising for us. And it somehow showed that at this level, which is A1 is rather low, the written expression in a functional setting seems to work better because of intuition. That's our inference for the time being. These are results item by item. And on the left side, we have the mirror texts, the dogs and the bears. You can see the shapes are very, very similar, just because the questions as well followed exactly the same pattern. What differed was everything was about dogs, and in the other text, everything was about bears, but the questions were quite the same. So very little difference in how students responded. Looks much different in the functional text, in the poster based test. What we could observe is, in terms of item performance, multiple choice functioned better than constructed response, something that is all the time the case with Romanian students. It happened in PEARLS, it happened in PISA as well. And other remarks would look into how scores differ depending on the richness of the iconic support. So each time the question is based on a lot of image support, the responses are better than when the iconic support is minimal, or it is at a certain distance. It is still there on the page, but it is not exactly where the question is. Yeah, I'll be done in 2 minutes, I swear.
Thank you.
Learning to learn tasks actually were two categories of questions. One referred to self-assessment. Students were asked twice throughout the questions how they assess their performance. Did they answer well in questions 1, 2, 3? What do they think about that? Whether those difficult questions, did they answer well? And this was a question that was addressed also in the Romanian modules, exactly in the same way. And the gap between the performance in the Romanian mother tongue and in English is just 5%. So it is at the limit of significance, you know. So this self-assessment thing works. That's the idea. Works well. Students are able to self-assess quite well in both languages. When they are asked in both languages about work in both languages, they quite well self-assess themselves. There is a large gap when it comes to looking for sources of information. That was the other category of questions that, connecting to the learning to learn key competence. And when they are asked in Romanian, their scores are higher by 10% than when they are asked in English. This works less well. It was expected, actually, because we are, even though the questions were quite easy, level A1, but nevertheless, it is just after 200 hours of, about 200 hours of English throughout primary education. So not a lot of accumulation, not a lot of acquisition. And that's my last slide, swear. In cultural awareness and expression, they were supposed to express themselves either in color or in drawing with respect to a stimulus. When they have the same task in Romanian and the same task in English, so the same type of task. As you can see, there is a difference in between English and Romanian, but not a huge difference, nevertheless. So this expression, the competence of culturally expressing themselves is well developed, acceptably developed in both languages at the end of primary education. And that's it. Thank you.